He's back.
I'm
He's
back.
here.
I'm
Let's
back.
go. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Connor O'Neill back just in time for the playoff stretch. Whoa.
What a time to come back. What a time to make a comeback.
Uh, we got a lot of games to get to, including the Waterloo Warriors and Carleton Ravens going right to the last second of possible game time.
An all-time Canadian football finish.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. You get weather, you get the whole thing. You know what? Let's just start there. Waterloo Carleton. This game was a blowout early, a pick six, coming from Lefebvre. It was 19 to 10, 26 to 10. And then all of a sudden, here come the Carleton Ravens.
And yeah, it was a tough start for Lefebvre, but final stats in this one for him were really good. Had the pick six, bounce back, threw 3 touchdown passes. I mean, let's talk about Josh Ferguson too. 100-yard game for him. I think this was just an all-around. I mean, I don't want to say it was an all-around good game for Carleton because they were down bad, but it was an all-around great show of resiliency and fighting through that adversity to come back and win it on the Rouge, which former Carleton Raven Nate Bahar absolutely loved.
Yeah, no, with this one coming down to the end, a punt obviously late in the game. Waterloo chooses to field it at the 2 instead of possibly letting it bounce into the end zone or trying to play a waiting game. Really backed them up in their own end, unable to get anything going, and they had to punt it. This was a wicked headwind for them in the fourth quarter. Carleton was playing the field position game, and for Waterloo, they had no choice but to punt a ball straight into a strong wind, let it sit there in field position. Carleton had nothing to do except run the clock and attempt a field goal, but Forcier didn't need to hit it at all. He just needed the leg to clear the back of the end zone. And I think for Coach Corey Grant, maybe the timeout he took right at the end was, or during the Waterloo timeout, he said, we don't need a field goal. We need this ball to be in the parking lot. Oh, I guess there's no parking on that end for Waterloo, but in the field behind the fences, get it out of here.
Yeah, and I also want to give a quick shout out to the Ravens defense in this one. I know it was a tough start, tough 3 quarters for them, but to pitch a shutout in the fourth quarter when you absolutely needed it was huge. They have a sneaky good defense, man.
Yeah, 8 TFLs, a couple forced fumbles. Louis Laveau, I believe, had a block as well, or a block kick. It was a big day. It was a big day, certainly, for Carleton. They really hung in last week against Queens, but couldn't pull away. This week, they learn from that. They grow, and they're building as a team. And as we sit looking at the standings, Connor, this one is going to be one that comes back to bite Waterloo. And last week, Carleton now 3-4 controls their own destiny. Guelph 3-4 controls their own destiny. And after that, Waterloo, Toronto, they're going to be fighting next week to see if one of these teams slip up. Can they sneak in? So for Guelph, that's a big way to go at the end. Really hurts their chances for the postseason. But let's move on. Which game do you want to go to? I'm letting you pick.
I want to talk about the Laurier Golden Hawks and the Windsor Lancers because I was super excited for this game this weekend, and it did not turn out the way that I expected it to turn out. A 40-7 win for the Laurier Golden Hawks in this one. Hell of a performance from Taylor Elgersma. Hell of a performance from the Laurier offense as a whole. But Elgersma, 27 of 36, 332 yards, 2 touchdown passes in this one, no interceptions.
And
what can't this guy do?
A big rushing touchdown, a 20-yard rushing touchdown.
Huge rushing touchdown.
You're talking Taylor Elgersma, and I have been singing his praises the last couple weeks while you've been gone about how this
Oh,
guy
I know
is
you
the
have.
OUA MVP. But what I need to talk about with this game, this was all about the Windsor offense getting back on track. Luke Brubaker, the top player on Laurier's defense at any level, D-line, linebacker, secondary, Brubaker is the guy. Didn't even dress. Danny Skelton was the leading rusher for the Windsor Lancers. Is that a recipe for success for this Windsor team? No, absolutely not. We've seen it the last couple years. The game plan really has been put it on Danny Skelton's shoulders and give yourself a chance. At times, he's played really well, and that hasn't worked for other teams. But over the course of this season and last, that's when we've seen this Windsor offense really stall out. And all the hype was for Joey Zorn in his return. 6 carries, 9 yards. Chris John, 10 for 39. They were bottled up all game long.
Yeah, they were bottled up, and it's atypical, I think, for Windsor this year because when they're firing on all cylinder, when they have all three phases of their offense going, they've been one of the best teams not only in the OUA but in the country this year. Like they are a top 10 ranked school in the country, and I think that I don't know if this was just kind of a bump in the road or obviously it's Laurier's defense playing a damn good football game too, but I think they need to kind of go back, evaluate the tape, evaluate some of their tape from previous games as well, and come back with what was really working for us in the games where we were firing. But this was not the game that I expected from the Windsor Lancers. But I will give credit where credit's due because Laurier's defense, wow.
Yeah, this was a phenomenal day for them. Certainly early on, the safeties forced were field position, them pinning their ears back. 3 total safeties forced, and the field position they gave their offense all day was fantastic. So, yes, Elgersma and Co. are rocking it and putting up a ton of points and yardage, but they're getting a lot of help, and they got a lot of help this last week. So they look to be firing at all high speed. Quentin Scott just, I don't think anyone's got a hand on him early all game. It felt like he was running 5-6 yards again before he got touched. They're going to need that again next week, though. They have a huge matchup. As for Windsor, I'm going to kind of let it sit until the Tuesday episode. I know Connor's probably going to be busy, but I have some more thoughts on Windsor and Waterloo that I'm going to get into, but not here as we bring back Connor's Ottawa GG's 23-10. Oh, I guess 23-9.
Yeah, it was a good game for the GGs, good win for the GGs. 2 shutout quarters. They blanked the Marauders in the first quarter and the third quarter, holding them to just 9 total points. I mean, this is talent wise, this is a pretty loaded McMaster Marauders team. Keegan Hall, they limited him to 200 yards to the air, 1 interception. They did a really good job of bottling up the offensive backfield, I thought. And then yeah, I mean Jackson Cooling goes for 113 on 10 receptions, but when you look at what the other receivers did in this one, like Everett Reed, 3 catches, 26 yards. Matthew Gale, 2 catches, 23 yards. Devontae Hudson, 1 catch, 21 yards. Like I think that the Ottawa secondary did a really, really good job of saying, okay, Jackson Cooling is going to have a day. Fine. We're going to limit you in all other phases. You can't beat us with one player.
And with this Ottawa defense, and more importantly, McMaster offense, one-sided approach again. I know they attempted 16 rushes, Connor, but Keegan Hall has the brunt of this offense and the full weight of it on his shoulders. There have been a ton of turnovers this year. But to me, if we looked at his usage rate, like a basketball stat almost, he would be in the top percentile of the country. He is this offense. He is McMaster's output entirely. And when you have the ball in your hands that much, there's going to be turnovers happen. I mean, the interception, he was trying to make something happen out of nothing after rolling out to the sidelines and ended up being a pick 6 to a defensive lineman, Riley Hildebrandt. So once again, he's trying to make, what's the term we use in journalism? Chicken salad out of chicken, you know what? He's trying. And with the hero ball, there's going to be mistakes that come from it. So for Keegan Hall, I feel for him as he tries to push and propel this offense. But 2-6 for McMaster, out of the playoffs once again. A tough look for Mac back-to-back years. They've really declined since that pre-COVID Yates Cup win.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, with watching this team, I think there's been a lot of moments where you can see what they can do, what their potential can be. It's just how are they going to reach this potential? And I think this offseason, again, they're going to go back to the drawing board. They're going to retool. They're going to find ways. But I do have faith in the I do have faith in the McMaster staff. I think it's a great program, but it's just how are you going to sustain, reach, and continue the potential that we've seen in flashes this year.
All right. Ottawa, Josh Jansen, Connor. Your team has found life. He has been a
And
breath of fresh air. I say it each and every week, but the consistency in which he throws the football, they don't have to have much. They've got so many athletes out wide. I don't even think Melo Fall was not a big factor. Jean Durand, only 4 catches. Um, he's played so well that he just lets the offensive line take a breath. They don't always have to be grinding out yardage in the run game. Um, with Josh Jansen, they've got a game against Queens this week. It's going to be homecoming, yada, yada, yada. They're going to really be tested. This is where Jansen is going to be. And I'll get into this with our previews leading up to Thursday. Queens defense is nasty. We're going to talk about them here in a second. They are capital NASTY nasty. And he's going to be tested. They're not going to let them run the ball.
no, they certainly won't. And I mean, just to circle back to Jansen, he is a smooth operator in the pocket. 17 of 27, 261. He's one of these guys. I know we talked about it with a couple other quarterbacks this year, but you don't have to ask him to do too much. He's going to deliver. He's going to get the ball to the playmakers. But yeah, you're right. He is facing a huge test this upcoming week. We won't spoil it too much. I know you're going to talk about it on Tuesday, but he is going to be facing a huge test with this Queens Gales defense coming up. There's going to be a lot of pressure. There's going to be a lot of rushers in his face, in his grill. So let's see if he can stay calm, stay smooth with that Golden Gales defense hot on his tail.
And guess what? We're talking about Queens next because not only was this defense on point, listen to these stat lines. Okay. All of the players were in. Keegan Vanek, fumble recovery. Okay. Added in. Darren Newell, 4 tackles, 2 of which were sacks. An extra one was a TFL. Okay. Ashton Miller Melanson, 5.5 tackles, 2 picks. And Silas Hubert, who is not even at full speed yet. He is still working back from his injury. 7.5 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 more TFLs, and a forced fumble. Oh, all headlined by Oliver Mwembi, who also had 7.5 tackles as he flies. This guy's a freak, Connor. Queen's defense is for real. They are a pain in the you-know-what for any team. And really credit to Guelph for sticking with the run game and Donovan Malloy. But I think that Queens was just kind of letting them take short yardage and run the ball once they were up.
Yeah, this Queens defense is so much fun to watch. The way they operate, the way they play off of each other, the way they get into the backfield and mix things up is incredible. And they are they're gonna cause some problems. They caused some problems this week. They're gonna cause problems next week. They're gonna cause problems when you get into the playoffs. But let's talk about the offense here because it is the Jared Chisari show with Queens right now. Russell Weir is doing everything he needs to do in terms of handing the ball off and watching Jared Chisari
16
go for
attempts
222 yards.
16 attempts
yards.
this week, 9 last week. They're letting Russell Weir take a few more shots. But you are right. Jared Chisari.
He doesn't need to. Yeah.
No.
Because when you have a guy like that, I mean, what was the stat that we put out yesterday on See It Perspective?
Oh, give me
Go
a
ahead
second
and
here.
tell the listeners.
It was a redo of his last 3 games or a recap. So against York, 17, 286 and 5. That was an OUA player of the week. This last week against Carleton, 26 for 231, no touchdowns because your man is a vulture. And we'll talk about that next. This week, 33, 229, no touchdowns again. But while he has not scored in the last two games, Anthony Souls last week went 98 and 3. This week went 23 and 2. So Cesari and Souls as a combination are just demolishing teams left, right, and center.
And that's the Queens formula, right? We know Queens is going to run the ball. We know Snyder's from that Western tree where we are going to grind you into the ground with our run game. And can you stop all three of our can you stop both of our very talented running backs? It's so much fun to watch Queens play offense.
And with Russell Weir, Connor, it's almost like they've dialed it back to when James Keenan was the quarterback. Because when he does drop back, it is 1 to 2 reads and take off. Get out of here. We don't want you hanging out. He is. He's fast. He's deceptive. I think where they're going to run into an issue, the longer Vreek is out, the more teams are going to expend a ton of resources to slow down this run game. Whether they can or not is a different question. But as they expend resources, it's going to put more pressure on Russell to sit in the pocket as well if they get into second and long situations.
Yeah, I think, and just before we move on, I think that's my major question with Queens now. And it's not like it's not a knock or anything. It's just because they haven't really had to do so yet. But like when they do get into these situations where teams are loading the box and just focusing on the run, what is it going to look like when they're trying to force Russell Weir to beat you with his arm? How does he react to that? How does he adjust and adapt?
Yeah, and as Queens kind of plays this waiting game with Alex Freakin, this is now week 4 with the injured wrist. We don't know that timeline for return. But let's move on to the final game, the nightcap. Deceptive if you are looking at the box score for this one. This game, Connor, was 11 to 10 with 2:33 left in the game. And then Western scored. Toronto punted it. They had a huge punt return from Kabongo. Western scored again. And then they got, I believe, a turnover. And Western scored again. And in the blink of an eye, from 2:34 to 20 seconds left in the quarter, Western went up 32 to 10. 21 points. Bam. When it rains, it pours.
Yeah, that was the nail in the coffin. I mean, when you allow a team like Western to score 22 points in under 2 minutes, that it makes coming out of the half so much harder. It's deflating, honestly. I think when something like that, when you're in the game and then you essentially go down 22 points in a span of 2 minutes, it is deflating and it is tough to come out in the second half to that. And against teams like Western, you just cannot give them that type of edge.
And the final, obviously, 66-24. Western just continued to pile on towards the end with pick 6, a big run in from Jerome Rancourt, who had 2 touchdowns on the day. I think with Toronto, like you're saying, it was deflating. You could tell that this team was pretty fired up. They were in a tight game with the Western Mustangs, who are 7-0. They're playing to control their own destiny with the playoffs. And like you said, blink of an eye, those hopes and dreams are dashed. Once Western gets up on you, we all know it's tough to play with and against them, but they certainly put the pedal to the metal late in this game to just kind of keep the grind on. And for Western, it was an impressive day for obviously their big players. Yazbek and Edwards combined for over 100, 2 touchdowns. Rancourt rushed 2, Hillock rushed 1. So 5 on the ground. Hillock threw for 302 as well. I think as they kept going, Hillock started to open up more downfield, but during the game, we'll say was kind of favoring his elbow a little bit as they went on. So something to watch for as they come into this next week and as it gets more chilly here in the OUA with the final push going.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, just to kind of circle back on Hillock, like to use an NBA 2K term, he's a volume shooter, right? The more he throws the ball, the more he gets comfortable, the more the game opens up. So it'll be interesting to see how that's going to affect him next week and what that's going to look like. But I certainly expect the Mustangs to kind of enter the postseason with an undefeated record and be the number one seed in the OUA.
Look at that. Connor comes in on a Sunday and gives his picks for the following week.
I gave a pick, one pick. I'm not going to be there on Tuesday, so I got to get one in now. But I'll text you them and you can read them out on the Tuesday pod.
But for us, that's all we have. Western 66, Toronto 24. Big week coming up as lots of games will be on the bucket list. Laurier Western's a big one. Carleton Guelph is the other major playoff implications. Waterloo Toronto hanging in as well. So with that, Connor R. O'Neill making his triumphant return at Wade Zank at
Good to be
CF
back.
Perspective. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it entails. Take care.